The dust swirled across the empty schoolyard as Clara Langley gathered her books, fighting back tears that threatened to spill onto the worn pages of Dickens and Shakespeare. The school board's decision had been swift and merciless. A schoolmarm without a husband was deemed morally unfit to teach the children of Willow Creek, Arizona Territory, in the year 1883. 6 years of dedicated teaching wiped away with a single stroke of Chairman Peterson's pen. "Miss Langley," Mr. Peterson had said that morning, his mustache twitching with discomfort, "the board has come to a unanimous decision. While your teaching abilities are not in question, your unmarried status at the advanced age of 26 presents a problem of propriety." Clara had stood tall, her spine rigid as iron, even as her world crumbled. "I fail to see how my marital status affects my ability to educate children, Mr. Peterson. It's a matter of moral example, Miss Langley. Young ladies look to you as a model of womanhood. What message does it send when their teacher remains unwed? The children need proper guidance." Now, as she packed her personal items into a crate, Clara wondered what she would do. Teaching was her calling, her passion. She had traveled west from Boston 5 years ago specifically to bring education to this frontier town. Her small salary had allowed her to rent the modest room above the Mercantile and send a little money home to her widowed mother. Without her position, she would have to return east in disgrace. The schoolhouse door creaked open, allowing a shaft of bright sunlight to cut across the room. "Miss Langley." The deep voice belonged to Brayden Xavier, one of the most successful ranchers in the territory. He removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair as he stepped into the schoolroom. "I heard what happened. The whole town's talking." Clara wiped quickly at her eyes. "Mr. Xavier, I didn't expect visitors." Brayden Xavier was 30 years old, owner of the Broken Arrow Ranch that stretched for miles outside town. His cattle operation employed half a dozen men, and he'd recently expanded into horse breeding. Clara knew him mainly through his 2 children, 8-year-old Thomas and 6-year-old Emma, who had been in her classroom since she'd arrived. Their mother had died of fever 3 years ago. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice softer than she'd expected from such a tall, broad-shouldered man. "They fired you because you're not married." Clara's chin lifted. "Apparently, an unmarried woman of my age poses a threat to the moral development of impressionable young minds." Brayden shook his head, turning his hat in his hands. "It's not right. You're the best teacher this town's ever had. My Thomas has learned more from you in a year than he did in 2 years with old Mr. Franklin." "Thank you, Mr. Xavier, but the board has made their decision." Brayden stepped further into the room, his boots leaving dusty prints on the freshly swept floor. "What will you do now? Return east, I suppose. My mother is in Boston. That's a long journey for a woman alone." His blue eyes studied her face intently. "And it would be a terrible loss for Willow Creek." Clara placed her well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice into the crate. "I don't see that I have much choice. You could marry me." The book slipped from Clara's fingers, landing with a thud on the wooden floor. "I beg your pardon." Brayden bent down to retrieve the book, his tanned fingers brushing against the leather cover before handing it back to her. "It's not as sudden as it sounds. I've been thinking about it for some time." "About marrying me?" Clara couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "About finding a mother for my children and a wife for myself. Emma needs a woman's guidance, and Thomas, well, he respects you more than anyone, and I—" He cleared his throat. "I've always admired your spirit, Miss Langley." Clara stared at him, speechless. In 5 years of living in Willow Creek, she'd exchanged perhaps 50 words with Brayden Xavier outside of parent-teacher discussions about his children. "Mr. Xavier, you can't be serious." "I am." His gaze didn't waver. It would solve your problem with the school board and mine with raising 2 children alone. We could help each other. That's not a reason to enter into marriage, isn't it? Most marriages out here begin with practical considerations. My first marriage did. The love came later. Clara felt her cheeks flush. You're suggesting we marry without affection. I'm suggesting we marry with respect, which is more than many couples start with. He set his hat back on his head. And then you can keep teaching not just the town's children, but mine as well. Now teach our children, I'd say to you as my wife. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, mind racing. This is absurd. Is it? You need a husband to keep your position. I need a wife to raise my children properly. We're both practical people, Miss Langley. You hardly know me. I know you're patient, intelligent, and kind. I've seen how you care for your students. I know you stayed up 3 nights straight when influenza swept through town last winter, helping Doc Miller tend to the sick children. I know more than you think. Clara was stunned that he had noticed such things. Even so, marriage is a sacred commitment, one I don't take lightly. His expression grew more serious. I'm offering partnership, Miss Langley, a home for you, a mother for my children, and yes, the chance for you to keep teaching. The rest. Well, that could grow in time. The schoolhouse felt suddenly too small, the air too thick. I need time to think, Mr. Xavier, he nodded as if he'd expected this response. The stage leaves for Tucson in 3 days. Think until then. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Miss Langley, I believe we could build a good life together. After he left, Clara sank into her chair, her mind in turmoil. Marriage to a man she barely knew. It seemed desperate, foolish. Yet what were her alternatives? Return to Boston defeated. Abandon her students. Give up the independence she had fought so hard to establish. That evening, Clara sat in her small room above Hargrove's Mercantile, writing a letter to her mother. How could she explain this situation? That she had been deemed morally deficient for remaining unmarried. That a widowed rancher had proposed marriage as casually as one might suggest a business arrangement. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Miss Langley, Mrs. Hargrove's voice called through the door. There's someone here to see you. Clara opened the door to find Emma Xavier standing there, her small face solemn, a cloth-wrapped bundle in her hands. Emma, what are you doing here at this hour? Clara looked past the child, expecting to see her father, but the stairwell was empty. Pa doesn't know I'm here, Emma whispered. Thomas is keeping watch downstairs. I brought you something. She thrust the bundle forward. Clara unwrapped it to find a small apple pie, slightly lopsided but still warm. Did you make this? Emma nodded proudly. Mrs. Caldwell helped me with the oven part, but I mixed it all myself. Her little face grew serious. Miss Langley, is it true you won't be our teacher anymore? Clara knelt down to Emma's level. The school board has decided I shouldn't teach anymore because I'm not married. That's stupid, Emma declared with the forthright conviction of a 6-year-old. Emma Xavier, that's not a word a young lady should use. Pa says it sometimes, Emma countered, then bit her lip. Miss Langley, if you married my pa, could you stay and be our teacher? Clara's breath caught. Did your father tell you to ask me that? Emma shook her head vigorously. No, madam. I heard him talking to Mr. Johnson at the general store. Pa said he asked you to marry him so you could stay and teach us. I think it's a splendid idea. Do you now? Clara couldn't help smiling at the child's enthusiasm. Yes. You could live at our house and help me with reading and make sure Thomas does his arithmetic instead of sneaking off to fish. And Emma's eyes grew wide with possibility. Would you be our mother then? The question pierced Clara's heart. Emma, marriage is very complicated, but don't you like us? Emma's lower lip trembled slightly. Of course I like you. You and Thomas are 2 of my favorite people in the world. And do you like Pa? Clara hesitated. Your father is a good man." "He's the best," Emma agreed. "And he's sad a lot, but not when he talks about you. Then he smiles." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest at this revelation. "Emma, decisions like this take time. Emma Xavier." Thomas's urgent whisper came from the stairwell. "We have to go." Pa's finished at the blacksmith's. Emma gave Clara a quick, impulsive hug. "Please think about it, Miss Langley. We need you." Then she was gone, scampering down the stairs after her brother. Clara stood in the doorway, the warm pie in her hands, her thoughts even more confused than before. The next morning, Clara walked to the edge of town, needing space to think. The desert stretched before her, vast and unyielding yet beautiful in its way. Like life on the frontier, it required strength and adaptability to survive. Miss Langley. She turned to find Sheriff Daniel Morgan approaching, his badge glinting in the morning sun. "Sheriff Morgan, heard about the school board's decision. Damned foolishness if you ask me." "Language, Sheriff," Clara replied automatically, then smiled at her teacher's instinct. He chuckled. "Even off duty, you're still teaching. That's why the town needs you." His expression grew serious. "I also heard Xavier made you an offer." News traveled fast in Willow Creek. "Word certainly gets around." "Small towns," he shrugged. "For what it's worth, Xavier's a good man, hard-working. Devoted to those kids. Been alone too long." "Are you encouraging me to accept his proposal, Sheriff? Just saying you could do worse, and those children of his need a mother." He tipped his hat. "Whatever you decide, you've got friends in Willow Creek, Miss Langley. Remember that." By midday, Clara had visited the general store, the post office, and the church, and at each stop, someone mentioned Brayden Xavier's proposal. Mrs. Johnson at the general store hinted that the Xavier ranch house needed a woman's touch. Reverend Wilson commented that marriage is a blessed state, especially when it serves multiple godly purposes. Even Dr. Miller, when Clara stopped by to return a borrowed book on anatomy, noted that Xavier's children have been much healthier since you started teaching them proper hygiene. It seemed the entire town was conspiring to push her toward accepting. That afternoon, Clara marched determinedly to the Broken Arrow Ranch. If the town was going to discuss her potential marriage, she at least needed to have a proper conversation with the man who had proposed it. The ranch house was larger than she had imagined. A substantial two-story structure with a wide porch and newly painted shutters. A corral held several magnificent horses, and beyond it stretched fenced pastures where cattle grazed lazily in the afternoon sun. As Clara approached, Thomas spotted her from where he was mending a fence with one of the ranch hands. "Miss Langley," he called, dropping his tools and running toward her. "Are you coming to live with us?" "Thomas," she replied, "I've come to speak with your father. He's in the barn." Thomas pointed toward a large structure at the edge of the yard. "Is it true the school board fired you because you don't have a husband? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard." "That's not appropriate language, Thomas." "But Pa said the same thing, only he used words I'm not allowed to repeat." Despite herself, Clara smiled. Nevertheless, she found Brayden in the barn examining the leg of a chestnut mare. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing muscular forearms tanned by the sun. He looked up as she entered, surprise and something else, pleasure, crossing his face. "Miss Langley. I didn't expect you so soon. Apparently, the entire town is discussing our potential marriage," she said without preamble. "I thought we should discuss it ourselves properly." Brayden straightened, wiping his hands on a cloth. "I apologize if I've caused you embarrassment. I'm more concerned with understanding exactly what you're proposing." Clara took a deep breath. "A marriage of convenience is one thing, Mr. Xavier, but there are expectations in a marriage that go beyond convenience." A flush crept up Brayden's neck. "I understand that, Miss Langley." "Do you?" Because I need to be clear. I won't enter into a marriage without mutual respect and honesty, even if it begins as an arrangement. I wouldn't ask you to. He stepped closer. Clara, may I call you Clara? When she nodded, he continued, I'm not offering charity or just a business arrangement. I'm offering a partnership, a real marriage. But you can't possibly, she hesitated. You can't possibly feel the things a husband should feel for a wife. We barely know each other. I know enough. His blue eyes held her steadily. I've watched you with my children, with all the children in town. I've seen your patience, your intelligence, your kindness. I've noticed more than you realize. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. Admiration isn't the same as affection. No, it's the foundation for something deeper. He took another step toward her. I'm not promising love at the start, Clara. I'm too honest for that, but I'm offering the chance for it to grow. Clara studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or pity. She found only earnestness and a warmth that surprised her. Your children came to see me last night, she said. Emma brought me a pie. Brayden's eyes widened. They what? I told them not to bother you while you were deciding. They're very persuasive advocates on your behalf. Clara couldn't help smiling. Emma asked if I would be their mother. A shadow of vulnerability crossed Brayden's face. They miss having a mother. Sarah's been gone 3 years now. Did you love her very much? Clara asked softly. Yes, he answered without hesitation. Our marriage began as a practical partnership too. I needed help with the ranch. Her family needed money. But we grew to care deeply for each other. His voice roughened. I wouldn't dishonor her memory by pretending that what I'm offering you is the same as what I felt for her at the end. But I believe we could build something real, Clara. His honesty touched her more deeply than flowery declarations might have. I appreciate your candor, Mr. Xavier. Brayden, he corrected gently. If you're considering becoming my wife, you should use my given name. Brayden, she repeated, the name feeling strange on her lips. I need to ask you something important. If I were to accept your proposal, would you truly support my teaching, wholeheartedly? His response was immediate. You're gifted, Clara. The children of Willow Creek need you, not just my children, all of them. I meant what I said. Marry me and teach our children. All of them. Clara took a deep breath, the sense of hay and leather and horses filling her senses. I need one more day to think, she said finally. This isn't a decision to make lightly. I understand. He nodded solemnly. The offer stands until that stage leaves tomorrow. After that, he shrugged. We both have to move forward with our lives one way or another. That night, Clara barely slept, weighing every aspect of Brayden's proposal. She thought of Emma's eager face and Thomas's growing intelligence that needed nurturing. She considered the practical benefits: security, a home, the ability to continue teaching against the uncertainty of marrying a man she respected but didn't love. By morning, she had made her decision. Clara found Brayden at the livery stable, discussing a new saddle with the blacksmith. He looked up as she approached, hope and apprehension mingling in his expression. Mr. Xavier Brayden, she corrected herself. I've given your proposal considerable thought. The blacksmith suddenly found urgent business elsewhere, leaving them alone among the horses and tack. And Brayden's voice was carefully neutral. I have conditions, Clara said firmly. A slow smile spread across his face. I expected nothing less from you. First, I want to continue teaching not just your children but all the children of Willow Creek. That means the school board must reinstate me. I've already spoken to Peterson. Once you're Mrs. Xavier, your moral fitness won't be in question. Clara bristled slightly at this, but continued. Second, in our home, we will be equal partners. I won't be a subordinate. Agreed. His smile widened. Sarah would never have allowed that either. Third, Clara hesitated. I can't promise feelings I don't have yet, but I can promise respect, dedication, and honesty. I will be a good mother to your children and a supportive wife to you. That's more than many marriages begin with." Brayden took her hands in his. "Is that a yes, Clara Langley?" "It's a yes, Brayden Xavier." As she spoke the words, Clara felt a curious mixture of trepidation and hope. "Though I think we should have a proper courtship before the wedding." Brayden laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "We're doing this all backward, aren't we? Proposal first, courtship after." "Nothing about this is conventional," Clara agreed, "but perhaps that's fitting for life out here. Then let me do this properly." Still holding her hands, Brayden went down on one knee, drawing gasps from passers-by on the street. "Clara Langley, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I promise to respect you, support your teaching, and be a faithful husband. Together, we'll raise my children, our children, and build a good life." Clara felt her eyes misting over, moved by his sincerity despite the practical nature of their arrangement. "Yes, Brayden Xavier, I will marry you." A small cheer erupted from across the street, where several townspeople had stopped to watch. Clara flushed with embarrassment, but Brayden just grinned and stood, keeping hold of her hand. "Might as well give them something to really talk about," he murmured, and before Clara could respond, he leaned down and kissed her gently on the lips. It was brief, respectful, but sent an unexpected warmth through her body. When he pulled away, his eyes held a question. Clara gave a small nod, answering it without words. Perhaps this arrangement held more promise than she had initially thought. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Reverend Wilson agreed to perform the ceremony, and Mrs. Johnson organized a wedding dinner at the town hall. Clara wrote to her mother, explaining her sudden engagement in terms that emphasized Brayden's respectability and the children's needs rather than the school board's ultimatum. True to his word, Brayden courted her properly during this time. He brought flowers, took her on buggy rides around his property, and invited her to dinner with Thomas and Emma, who were ecstatic about the upcoming wedding. Each day, Clara found herself increasingly comfortable in his presence, discovering that beneath his quiet exterior was a thoughtful, intelligent man with a surprising sense of humor. "Did you always want to be a rancher?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch of the Xavier home after the children had gone to bed. "No," Brayden admitted, looking out over the land that stretched before them. "I wanted to be a doctor, actually. Started studying in St. Louis when I was 18. "What happened?" "My father died. The ranch was struggling and my mother couldn't manage alone, so I came back, put away the medical books, and learned to be a cattleman." There was no bitterness in his voice, just acceptance. "You regret it?" "Sometimes," he said honestly. "But then I look at what I've built, the legacy I'm creating for Thomas and Emma, and I know it was the right choice." He turned to her, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "What about you? Did you always want to be a teacher?" "Always," Clara smiled. "Even as a child, I would line up my dolls and teach them letters. My father was a professor before he died. He believed education was the greatest gift one could give or receive. A wise man." "He would have liked you," Clara said, surprising herself with the certainty of it. "He valued honesty above all else." Brayden reached over and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against her skin. "I'm glad you said yes, Clara. Whatever reason brought us together, I'm grateful for it." The simple sincerity of his words touched something deep within her. For the first time, Clara allowed herself to acknowledge that perhaps this marriage might become more than an arrangement of convenience. Perhaps, like Brayden's first marriage, affection, even love, might grow from these practical beginnings. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Clara stood in Mrs. Hargrove's best bedroom, where she had been given space to prepare. Her dress was simple but elegant, a cream-colored gown with lace trim that she had originally brought west for special occasions. Mrs. Hargrove had added fresh ribbons and a delicate veil. "You look beautiful, dear," Mrs. Hargrove said, adjusting the veil. "Brayden Xavier is a fortunate man." "I'm the fortunate one," Clara replied, surprised to find she meant it. "His children are wonderful and he's a good man." "The best kind of marriages start with respect," Mrs. Hargrove said wisely. "Love grows stronger when it's rooted in friendship." A knock at the door announced the arrival of Emma, dressed in a new blue dress, her hair neatly braided with ribbons. "Miss Langley, you look like an angel." "Thank you, Emma, and soon you can call me." "Whatever you feel comfortable with." Emma's face grew serious. "Could I call you Mother? I don't really remember my real mother much." Clara knelt down, careful of her dress. "If that's what you'd like, I would be honored, but we don't need to decide everything today. We have time." Emma threw her arms around Clara's neck. "I'm so happy you're going to live with us forever." The ceremony itself was simple but moving. The entire town gathered in the small church, curiosity and goodwill filling the pews. Thomas stood proudly beside his father, while Emma scattered wildflower petals along the aisle. When Clara entered, Brayden's face transformed. The look of admiration and tenderness in his eyes made her heart flutter unexpectedly. Perhaps this was how Sarah had felt when they had begun their practical partnership, Clara thought. Perhaps this was the beginning of something genuine. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Wilson began, his voice carrying through the crowded church. "We are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Clara listened to the familiar words with new understanding. Marriage on the frontier was often a practical matter, a joining of resources and abilities for mutual benefit and survival. Yet within that practicality, there was room for deeper connection, for growing affection, for love. When it came time for the vows, Brayden's voice was steady and sure. "I, Brayden James Xavier, take thee, Clara Elizabeth Langley, to be my wedded wife. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do us part." Clara's voice trembled slightly as she repeated her own vows, the enormity of the commitment washing over her. This was no temporary arrangement. It was a lifetime promise to a man she was only beginning to know. "With this ring, I thee wed," Brayden said, sliding a simple gold band onto her finger. It had been his mother's, he had told her, brought west from Virginia decades ago. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Wilson declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Brayden leaned down to kiss her, and this time, with the blessing of the church and community, Clara allowed herself to respond. His lips were warm and gentle against hers, a promise of tenderness to come. The celebration afterward was joyous. The town hall had been decorated with wildflowers and ribbon, tables laden with food contributed by every family in Willow Creek. There was music from fiddles and a piano, dancing and laughter that continued well into the evening. "Mrs. Xavier," Mr. Peterson approached, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and lingering discomfort. "The school board has voted unanimously to reinstate you as the town's teacher, beginning next week." "How generous of you," Clara replied, unable to keep a hint of irony from her voice. "Yes, well," he cleared his throat. "Your moral status is no longer in question, and your teaching abilities were never the issue. I'm glad we've resolved the matter to everyone's satisfaction." Clara smiled sweetly. "I look forward to continuing the children's education." As Peterson walked away, Brayden appeared at her side. "Was that Peterson eating crow?" "With a side of humble pie," Clara agreed, and they both laughed. Thomas approached, tugging at Brayden's sleeve. "Pa, can Miss Langley, Ma, can she really start teaching again?" Johnny Miller said his ma told him she would. Yes, son. Your new mother will be returning to the schoolhouse next week. Brayden ruffled the boy's hair. And I expect you to work twice as hard now that your teacher lives under your roof. Thomas groaned dramatically, but his eyes were bright with happiness. Yes, sir. As the evening drew to a close, Clara found herself growing increasingly nervous about what would follow. She and Brayden would be spending their first night as husband and wife at the ranch, with a proper honeymoon planned for the following month when they would travel to Tucson for a week. The ride to the ranch was quiet, the children having fallen asleep in the back of the wagon after the excitement of the day. When they arrived, Brayden carried first Emma, then Thomas inside to their beds while Clara stood in the main room, suddenly unsure of her place in this home. When Brayden returned, he seemed to sense her uncertainty. "Would you like tea before retiring?" he asked gently. Clara nodded gratefully. "Yes, thank you." As he moved about the kitchen, Clara took the opportunity to really look at the house that was now her home. It was well built and spacious, with a large main room that contained both living and dining areas, a separate kitchen and bedrooms upstairs. The furniture was solid if not fancy, and there were unexpected touches of refinement: books on shelves, a piano in the corner, good china in a cabinet. "Sarah played," Brayden said, noticing her gaze on the piano. "Do you?" "A little," Clara admitted. "My mother insisted on lessons. Emma has been asking to learn. Perhaps you could teach her." He handed her a cup of tea. "I want you to feel at home here, Clara. Anything you want to change, any way you want to make this place yours, you're welcome to do it. It's a lovely home already, but it hasn't had a woman's touch in 3 years." He sat across from her at the kitchen table. "I know this is all happening very quickly. I want you to know that He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I understand that we're still getting to know each other. I don't expect." Clara felt her cheeks flush. "We are married, Brayden." "Yes, but marriage is more than one night or 1 week. It's a lifetime." His eyes met hers steadily. "I want us to build something real, Clara. That takes time." His consideration touched her deeply. "Thank you." Later, in the bedroom that was now theirs, Clara changed into her nightgown behind a screen while Brayden politely busied himself elsewhere. When he returned, he had removed his jacket and boots but was otherwise still dressed. "I can sleep in the spare room if you prefer," he offered quietly. Clara took a deep breath. "No, that won't be necessary. As you said, we're building something real. We should begin as we mean to go on." The look of respect and admiration in his eyes gave her courage. When he finally joined her in bed, his movements were careful, considerate. His first kiss as they lay beside each other was a question, which Clara answered by drawing him closer. What followed was a discovery, tentative at first, then increasingly confident as they learned each other's bodies. Brayden was gentle, attentive to her responses, never rushing. Clara found herself responding with a passion she hadn't known she possessed, her body arching to meet his, her hands exploring the strong planes of his back and shoulders. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms, Clara felt a profound sense of rightness. This marriage might have begun as a solution to a problem, but it had already become something more. The seed of true affection had been planted, and in the fertile ground of respect and shared purpose, she believed it would grow strong. The next morning, Clara woke to find Brayden already gone, the sun streaming through curtains she had not drawn. For a moment, disorientation washed over her. This unfamiliar room, this new life. Then she heard the sounds of movement downstairs, children's voices, the clatter of cooking utensils, and reality settled around her. She was Clara Xavier now, wife and stepmother, teacher and homemaker. She dressed quickly in one of her everyday dresses and made her way downstairs, where she found chaos reigning in the kitchen. Emma was attempting to stir something in a bowl that had overflowed onto the table, while Thomas was arguing with his father about the proper way to cook eggs. Flour dusted every surface, and the smell of burnt toast filled the air. "Good morning," Clara said, hiding her amusement. All three Xaviers turned to her with identical expressions of relief. "Clara," Brayden looked comically out of his depth, "we were trying to make you breakfast in bed." "It's not working very well," Thomas admitted frankly. "I can see that." Clara rolled up her sleeves. "Perhaps we could work together instead. I'm not much of a cook myself, but I think between the four of us, we can manage a decent breakfast." Together, they salvaged what could be saved of the meal. Clara showed Emma how to stir properly to keep the batter in the bowl, while Brayden and Thomas tackled the eggs with more success than their previous attempts. The result was imperfect but edible, and more importantly, it was their first meal together as a family. "Is this how it's going to be every day?" Thomas asked as they ate. "All of us together. That's the plan," Brayden answered, smiling across the table at Clara. "Though hopefully with less mess. And I'll be going back to school next week?" Emma asked through a mouthful of slightly burnt toast. "Yes," Clara confirmed. "And I'll be your teacher again, though now I'll be Mrs. Xavier instead of Miss Langley." "That's going to be confusing," Thomas frowned. "Since you'll be Mrs. Xavier at home too." "You can call me Mother at home if you like," Clara suggested carefully, watching his reaction. Thomas considered this seriously. "Maybe. Can I think about it, of course. There's no rush." Clara was touched by his thoughtfulness. "We're all adjusting to new circumstances." After breakfast, Brayden had to attend to ranch business, and Clara took the opportunity to truly explore her new home. She found a sewing room that had been closed up since Sarah's death, filled with fabric and threads and patterns untouched for 3 years. In another room, she discovered a desk with account books and correspondence related to the ranch, evidence of Brayden's meticulous management of his business. The children showed her their rooms, Thomas's cluttered with books and small mechanical experiments, Emma's adorned with a collection of dolls and a pressed flower album. They took her to the barn to meet the horses and introduced her to the ranch hands who worked for their father. By the end of the day, Clara felt both exhausted and exhilarated. This life was so different from her solitary existence above the mercantile, fuller, noisier, more demanding, but also richer in small joys and unexpected moments of connection. That night, when Brayden joined her in their bedroom, there was less hesitation between them. The awkwardness of new intimacy was giving way to a deepening comfort, a growing understanding of each other's bodies and desires. Afterward, as they lay together in the darkness, Clara found the courage to ask something that had been on her mind. "Tell me about Sarah. If we're to raise her children together, I should know about their mother." Brayden was quiet for a long moment, and Clara feared she had overstepped. Then he began to speak, his voice low and thoughtful in the darkness. "Sarah was the daughter of a rancher who lost everything in a drought. She was 19 when we married, beautiful and full of life. She played the piano, as I mentioned, and she could ride as well as any man. She was kind but not soft. You had to be strong to survive out here." "Did you love her immediately?" Clara asked. "No," he admitted. "We respected each other, were attracted to each other, but love came later after Thomas was born, watching her with our son." His voice caught slightly. "That's when I knew what I felt was love." Clara laid her hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you for telling me. I won't try to replace her in the children's memories." "You don't need to." Brayden turned to face her, his features barely visible in the moonlight through the window. "You'll make your own place in their hearts, Clara. You already have." The following week, Clara returned to the schoolhouse, now as Mrs. Xavier rather than Miss Langley. The children greeted her with enthusiasm, seemingly untroubled by the rapid change in her marital status. If anything, they were more curious about what it was like to live at the Xavier Ranch than about the circumstances of her marriage. "You get to ride horses whenever you want?" Billy Johnson asked during the lunch break. "Are there cowboys there all the time?" Mary Peterson wanted to know. "Does Mr. Xavier really have a bull that killed 3 men?" This from Jimmy Wilson, the Reverend's son, whose imagination frequently outran his facts. "No, Jimmy, there is no killer bull," Clara corrected firmly. "And yes, there are ranch hands who work with the cattle and horses, but they're just ordinary men doing their jobs." "My pa says you only married Mr. Xavier so you could keep teaching us," Jimmy persisted. "Is that true, Mrs. Xavier?" A hush fell over the schoolyard as the children awaited her answer. Clara considered how to respond truthfully while still maintaining the dignity of her new marriage. "Your father is right that I wanted to continue teaching," she said carefully. "But people get married for many reasons, Jimmy. Mr. Xavier and I share mutual respect and common goals. We both believe in the importance of family and education." "But do you love him?" Mary asked with the directness of childhood. Clara smiled, thinking of the growing warmth between her and Brayden, the tenderness of their nights together, the easy companionship that was developing in their days. "Love takes many forms," she said, "and the best marriages grow stronger with time." It wasn't a direct answer, but it was honest, and it seemed to satisfy the children. As the weeks passed, Clara fell into the rhythm of her new life. Mornings were spent preparing breakfast with the children. Then all 3 would ride to town together, Clara to the school, Thomas and Emma as her pupils. Brayden would meet them in town some days. On others, Clara would bring the children home herself, where she would help with homework and prepare dinner while the children attended to their chores. Evenings were for family time reading together. Music. Clara had begun teaching Emma piano basics, games, and conversation. And then there were the nights when she and Brayden continued to discover each other, their physical connection deepening alongside their growing emotional bond. Clara found herself looking forward to these intimate hours, when whispered confidences and gentle touches built a bridge between what had been a pragmatic beginning and what was becoming a genuine marriage. One evening in late October, as autumn painted the landscape in gold and crimson, Brayden found Clara in the sewing room, working on new curtains for their bedroom. "I have something to show you," he said, an unusual excitement in his voice. "Can you come with me?" Curious, Clara set aside her sewing and followed him outside to the barn where a wagon stood ready, lined with blankets. "What's this?" she asked, a surprise. "Get in." His eyes twinkled with mischief. Clara allowed him to help her into the wagon, and soon they were traveling away from the ranch house, following a path that led into a stand of cottonwoods near the creek that gave the town its name. "Where are we going, Brayden?" "Not much further," he promised. The wagon rounded a bend and Clara gasped. In a small clearing stood a cabin, newly built, with smoke curling from its chimney and lantern light glowing in its windows. "What is this place?" "It's for us," Brayden explained, helping her down from the wagon. "A place just for you and me, away from the main house. I started building it before I even proposed to you. I thought if I ever remarried, we would need somewhere that was ours alone, not filled with memories of Sarah." Touched beyond words, Clara let him lead her inside. The cabin was simple but beautifully crafted, with a main room containing a fireplace, comfortable furniture, and bookshelves, plus a bedroom visible through an open door. It was small but perfect, intimate, private, a sanctuary. "You built this yourself?" "With help from the hands," Brayden admitted. But yes, mostly myself. Do you like it? It's wonderful, Clara breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. But when did you find the time? Early mornings, some evenings. It gave me purpose, thinking about the future. He took her hands in his. Our future, Clara. I wanted to show you that I'm committed to building something new, not just continuing what was. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. This tangible proof of his commitment, his forethought, even before he had known if she would accept his proposal, moved her deeply. "Thank you," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face, "for giving us this new beginning." "There's more," he said softly. From his pocket, he withdrew a small box. "I couldn't give you a proper engagement ring when we agreed to marry. Everything happened so quickly, but I want you to have this now." Inside the box was a delicate ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It was my grandmother's," Brayden explained. "My mother gave it to me before she died, said to save it for when I found true happiness again." Clara looked up at him, her heart pounding. "And have you found happiness?" "Yes," he said simply. "With you, Clara, these past months. You've brought light back into our home, into my life. What began as a practical arrangement has become the best decision I ever made." Clara felt something shift inside her, a final opening of her heart to the man before her. "I love you, Brayden," she said, the words coming naturally, truthfully. "I didn't expect to, not so soon, but I do." His face transformed with joy. "I love you too, Clara. I think I began falling in love with you the moment you stood up to Peterson in that schoolroom, refusing to be shamed for your independence." When he kissed her then, it was different from all their previous kisses, not a sealing of a bargain or an exploration of physical desire, but a true communion of hearts that had found each other despite the unconventional path that had brought them together. That night, in their private cabin, their lovemaking took on new meaning. No longer was it the fulfillment of marital obligation, or even the pleasure of physical connection. It was the expression of genuine love, a celebration of what they had built together from practical beginnings. Afterward, lying in each other's arms before the glowing embers of the fireplace, Clara marveled at the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had been facing the loss of her teaching position and returned to Boston in disgrace. Now she was not only still teaching but had found a family, a home, and a love she hadn't known she was seeking. "What are you thinking?" Brayden asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I'm thinking about how different my life is now, and how grateful I am that the school board fired me." Clara laughed softly. "Is that strange?" "Not at all." He pulled her closer. "Sometimes the best things come from what seem like disasters at the time." "The children seem happy," Clara observed. "Thomas actually called me mother yesterday when he didn't think anyone was listening. They are happy. We all are." Brayden's voice grew serious. "Clara, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. The ranch is doing well, and I've been thinking about expanding our family. How would you feel about having a child of our own? Not to replace Thomas and Emma in any way, but to add to our family." Clara's heart swelled with emotion. The thought of a child, their child, growing inside her, joining the family they were building, filled her with unexpected longing. "I would like that very much," she whispered. "A child born of love, to join our family that began with practicality." "Then perhaps we should practice," Brayden suggested with a smile, rolling her beneath him once more. Clara laughed, then gasped as his lips found the sensitive spot below her ear. "Practice does make perfect," she agreed, surrendering to the joy of their union. By the following spring, Clara's condition was becoming apparent to the observant eyes of Willow Creek. The school board, now firmly supportive of their married teacher, granted her request to continue teaching until the end of the term in May, with a replacement hired for the following autumn while she focused on her new baby. But you'll come back after? Emma asked anxiously when Clara explained that she would be taking time away from the schoolhouse. You won't stop being a teacher forever. No, sweetheart, Clara assured her. I'll return to teaching once the baby is a bit older. Teaching is part of who I am. And the baby is part of our family, Thomas added with the serious logic of a 9-year-old. So it makes sense for you to teach it too, just like you teach us. Clara smiled at his reasoning. That's right, and you two will be wonderful older siblings. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the spring and summer. Clara found herself surrounded by support not just from Brayden and the children, but from the women of Willow Creek, who had once judged her unmarried status, but now embraced her as a fellow wife and mother-to-be. Mrs. Hargrove organized a quilting circle to make a blanket for the baby. Mrs. Johnson saved the softest flannel from her store's shipments for baby clothes. Even Mr. Peterson's wife brought over preserved peaches to keep up your strength. Brayden was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly checking that Clara wasn't overexerting herself, insisting she rest each afternoon, adding special foods to their table that Dr. Miller suggested were good for expectant mothers. His concern was touching, if occasionally smothering. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, Clara reminded him one evening after he had forbidden her from carrying a basket of laundry upstairs. I know, he admitted, looking sheepish. It's just with Sarah, there were difficulties after Emma was born. I worry. Clara softened, understanding his fear. I'm healthy, the baby is healthy, and Dr. Miller says everything is progressing perfectly. You can't protect me from every discomfort, my love. I can try, he insisted, but with a smile that acknowledged the futility of his efforts. On a warm September evening, as golden light bathed the ranch in honey tones, Clara felt the first contractions begin. By midnight, the pains had intensified, and Brayden sent one of the ranch hands galloping toward town to fetch Dr. Miller. Emma and Thomas were ushered to a neighbor's house, wide-eyed and excited about the imminent arrival of their new sibling. The labor was long but uncomplicated. Throughout the night and into the following day, Clara drew strength from Brayden's steadfast presence, his hand never leaving hers except when Dr. Miller insisted he step outside. The women of Willow Creek took turns assisting Mrs. Hargrove with her practical efficiency, Mrs. Johnson with cool cloths and encouraging words, even young Mrs. Wilson from the church bringing prayer and calm reassurance. As sunset painted the sky in the same golden hues as the previous evening, their son entered the world with a robust cry that brought tears to Brayden's eyes. A boy, Doctor Miller announced, placing the red-faced, squalling infant on Clara's chest. A strong, healthy boy. Clara looked down at the tiny face, overcome with a love so powerful it took her breath away. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Brayden leaned close, his eyes filled with wonder as he gently touched his son's tiny hand. "He's perfect. You're both perfect." When they were finally alone, the baby swaddled and sleeping in a cradle beside their bed, Brayden sat on the edge of the mattress and took Clara's hand in his. "What shall we name him?" he asked softly. Clara had been considering this question for months. "I'd like to honor your father since he built the legacy our son will inherit, and perhaps my father as well," Brayden nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "William Daniel Xavier." "A good, strong name." "For a good, strong boy," Clara agreed, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but her heart full to bursting. "Rest now," Brayden urged, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You've done the most amazing thing today." "We did," Clara corrected sleepily. "You and I together. Just as we've done everything since the day you walked into my classroom and proposed a partnership." Brayden smiled, his eyes suspiciously bright in the lamplight. A partnership that became so much more. So much more, Clara echoed, drifting toward sleep, secure in the knowledge that the practical arrangement that had saved her career had blossomed into the deepest love she had ever known. The years that followed brought both joy and challenges to the Xavier family. William, called Will by his family, grew into a sturdy, curious child with his father's blue eyes and his mother's love of books. Clara returned to teaching when he was 2, taking him with her to the schoolhouse, where he became the unofficial mascot of Willow Creek School, sitting quietly with picture books or playing with wooden blocks in the corner while his mother taught. Emma blossomed into a thoughtful young woman with musical talent that Clara nurtured through regular piano lessons. Thomas developed his father's head for business and his stepmother's love of learning, devouring books on everything from animal husbandry to world history. The ranch prospered under Brayden's careful management, allowing him to send both older children to school in Tucson when they reached their teens. 5 years after Will's birth, Clara gave birth to their second child, together a daughter they named Sarah Elizabeth, honoring both Brayden's first wife and Clara's mother. Little Sarah proved to be as strong-willed as her namesakes, keeping her parents on their toes with her adventurous spirit and determined nature. Through it all, Clara and Brayden's love deepened and matured. The practical partnership that had begun with a desperate proposal in a schoolroom had transformed into one of the strongest marriages in Willow Creek. They still spent regular nights in their private cabin by the creek, preserving the special space that belonged only to them amid the busy life of the ranch and family. On the 10th anniversary of their wedding, Brayden surprised Clara with a trip to San Francisco, the honeymoon they had never properly taken. As they stood on the deck of a ferry crossing the bay, watching the city rise before them in the morning mist, Clara leaned against her husband's solid warmth. "Did you ever imagine, that day you proposed to me, that we would end up here?" she asked. Brayden's arm tightened around her waist. "I hoped," he admitted. "From the moment I saw you standing in that schoolroom, refusing to be ashamed of your independence, I knew you were someone special. I hoped we could build something real together. And we did." Clara turned to face him, this man who had offered her a practical solution and given her a lifetime of love instead. "We built a family, a home, a life together." "The best decision I ever made," Brayden said, echoing words he had spoken years before, "was walking into that schoolroom and saying, 'Marry me and teach our children.'" Clara smiled, remembering the incredulity she had felt at his proposal. "And the best decision I ever made was saying yes." As the ferry docked and they prepared to explore the city, Clara reflected on the unusual path that had brought her to this happiness. What had begun as a practical solution to the narrow-mindedness of a frontier town had blossomed into the richest, fullest life she could have imagined. The schoolmarm had been fired for being unmarried. A cowboy had proposed and said, "Now teach our children." And in accepting that proposal, Clara Langley Xavier had found not just a position or a home, but the true meaning of partnership and love. In the years that followed, Clara often thought back to that fateful day when the school board had deemed her morally unfit to teach because of her unmarried status. What had seemed like disaster had become the gateway to her greatest happiness. Sometimes, she reflected, life's detours led to the most beautiful destinations, and love could grow from the most practical of beginnings when hearts were open to its possibility.